Hey guys, Robman here. I figured I'd switch it up a little bit today and do a tank review instead of a ship review, so I'm going to feature the 122 TM. I figured this is a good tank to review today. It's available in the new Christmas boxes for this season. I know it's not a new tank. I actually got it myself. You can see from the camo when it first arrived in the marathon. Whew, that must have been a good year ago at least. But I still consider it to be a very competitive tier 8 medium tank. I wouldn't necessarily take it into skirmishes or anything like that, but it is definitely a good pub stomping tank. And over the course of this review, I'll go through why. Just briefly, I'll go over my basic stats, which ties into the build that I have for this tank. We can see here the three pieces of equipment I choose. I choose bounty aiming, vents, and rammer. I run bounty on everything at a minimum, if not bonded. I have enough gold on my account to be able to move things around. I also run an orderly ammo rack directive on this tank, just because the reload is absolutely horrible. You can see in the top right, it takes almost 13 seconds to load the gun, and that's even with food. This is fully kitted out. The DPM is as high as it can go. You can see I do have a relatively decent 121B crew on here. I do not actually own a 121, but we can see I do have the basics: BIA, Sixth Sense, Recon, so all the necessary skills that you would expect on a reasonably competitive crew. In terms of an actual build, I actually consider the only skill that's mandatory beyond the usual being BIA, situational awareness, Recon, and Sixth Sense. Intuition is actually incredibly strong in this tank, just because of the long reload. It actually makes it somewhat bearable if you need to switch shells. This doesn't have Hesh as an HE shell, but it does have 62mm of penetration, which is not terrible. The heat is really what sets this vehicle apart, however. 299mm of penetration is absolutely fantastic at tier 8. You can effectively fight tier 10s, no problem with this. There's really no issue at all. And that pretty much sums up the build. In terms of ammunition, you can see I carry 8 APCR, 20 heat, and 2 HE for a total of 30 rounds. I find that's a pretty well-rounded setup, especially because this is mostly a pub tank, as I said. So I'll go over from here briefly the statistics in the garage. I don't want to take too long with this, because like I said, I do have a good replay to show once I've gone through the stats. So starting from the top, firepower, this is really the bread and butter of this tank. It is a medium tank. 400 average damage, that is fantastic for a tier A medium tank. 233 pen on the standard round. Also with a fantastic shell velocity of almost 1400 meters a second. Very good standard ammo if you don't want to fire gold. I fire gold because 299mm penetration is absolutely amazing. As I said before, you can fight just about anything. T95s, Mauschens, mice, whatever you run into. No problems for this tank whatsoever. The letdown on the gun, the load time is absolutely atrocious. 13 seconds, and that's with a full build. As I said before, I'm running food, directive, rammer, vents, BIA, the whole nine, and it's still only 13 seconds. It is absolutely atrocious. Decent gun depression of 8 degrees. I consider that merely acceptable. My general rule is 10 degrees is good. Anything over 10 is excellent. So 8 is acceptable. I don't find myself struggling with it too much, particularly considering, I'll get into it in a minute, but the armor on this medium is actually exceptional for a tier 8 medium. Beyond that, 2-second aim time, pretty good. 0.26 accuracy. Bear in mind I do have bounty accuracy on this tank, just because I enjoy sniping with it. 0.26, once again, for a tier 8 medium with 400 alpha is amazing. And the DPM ties with the reload, once again, not very good. Hit point wise, 1400 hit points, pretty standard for this tier. What's really amazing for this tank, and I will show this in tanks.gg before I go into the replay, your hull armor, 120 on the upper hull. I believe it is actually the same on the lower hull, but with a slightly worse angle to it. And your sides are actually 80mm thick, which is excellent. The rear, you're not really going to bounce anything 50mm. The turret, 280mm on the front, although the cupolas are absolutely massive on this tank. Turret sides, same deal, 140mm. That is excellent for a tier A medium, and 70 on the rear. Don't expect anything from that. Beyond that, the mobility. This is about a 40-ton tank, so it's not heavy, but it's not something that people are going to want to be ramming very often. About a 600 horsepower engine with my setup. I do have the full field mods. So, specific power winds up being just under 16 with a 50 kilometer an hour top speed and 13 in reverse, and an excellent 50 degree per second hull traverse speed. Camouflage, I do have camo on a number of my crew members, not all of them, but the camo is nonetheless pretty decent. I don't find myself needing to rely on it very often in this tank, but it is nice to have. And for Tier 8, 433 meters view range is acceptable, and 862 meter signal range is about standard. Nothing special there. Beyond that, I will briefly jump into the field mods. This is an assault medium tank at Tier 8, so really the three things that we do. I opt for the light alloy mounting points. I don't really see a benefit with the reloading repair kits to run anything besides this. It just doesn't make much sense to me. I'll take the better hull traverse and gun traverse speed. Improved sight, once again I wanted to get the accuracy as good as I possibly can. That's how I got down to 0.26, so I run improved sight. And then the anti-reflective headlights coating, I take a bonus to concealment at the expense of a small amount of reverse speed. This one I could see switching. I have this on here mainly as a test, but it has worked well for me. You can see that the camo does wind up being pretty decent. In terms of the second slot category, I don't necessarily have it set up for one, but I would definitely recommend, if you were to run this with standard equipment, or you were trying to mark this tank, I would definitely put the scouting slot, and I would probably run some sort of optics on this, just so you get more spotting damage if you were to try and mark this. That just about sums up the stats for the tank. Now, if I pull this tank up on tanks.gg, we can see here. Now, from the front, it doesn't look too impressive, but when you bear in mind that this is with a 233mm penetration gun, it changes a little bit. Now, you can see the entire front of the turret is about 300 and change effective thickness. Nothing short of Tier 10 or Tier 9 premium shells are going to go through that, and even then, it's only going to be a 50-50. You can see the massive cupolas on the roof. They absolutely do not help this tank. But the hull armor tends to be kind of buttery if you don't angle it properly. Even angled, you can see at Tier 8, things will still definitely go through you. What's good about this upper hull and that steep angle on it is when you use the 8 degrees of gun depression on this tank, point the gun down, this is how you want to be fighting. Even only approximately 7 degrees, 6 degrees, your upper hull is still 225 at a minimum, 230, up to a maximum of 250. That is more than enough to bounce Tier 10 tanks 50% of the time. I don't recommend taking potluck with tank destroyers or tanks with incredibly accurate guns, because you can still see the cupolas on both sides of the turret. They're impossible to hide. But this is generally the strongest armor profile that you can put on the tank. You can also see you do have quite a bit of spaced armor here, 30mm essentially on the entirety of the side, along with the tracks. So if you do catch this from the side, you're going to want to shoot here, this little bar above the tracks but below the spaced armor, just to avoid the possibility of your shell getting absorbed by that armor. Once again, like I said in the garage, from the rear, this tank is still absolutely butter. With that said, let me pull up the replay and I will go through a gameplay example with this tank. So, pulling up the replay here, we can see already. Now, this is a platoon game. You can see that I am in a platoon with my friend Joshman54 and the Progetto 46. I will be bouncing around with both of us. This tank performs extremely well, as you can imagine, in platoons, simply because his clip prevents me from getting rushed down with my long reload, and my alpha damage actually gives him some staying power in addition to the actually decent armor that this tank has, as you will sort of see later in this game. So both me and him, we are going to start by heading off to the right-hand side from the southern base on steps. Generally, the first portion of this game is a little passive. It does take a little bit of time for this tank to get into position. You can see, even though the top speed is 50 kilometers an hour, this is still not the fastest mediums. It is probably one of the more sluggish ones. If I had to compare it to something that's a little more known, probably something along the lines of a Panther II has similar mobility, maybe a little worse than this. But this is still by no means a slow tank. You will still leave things like that poor T-28 in the dust. You can see already as the team starts to get into position, we have an AMX-30 sitting in the center ridge. I'm not quite sure why he's playing there. I personally haven't played that spot in years. I don't consider that spot competitive anymore. Astron Rex, it should have been a free shot. I donk it right into the tracks. What a terrible misplay. Terrible shot by me. And he repairs. Not a huge deal though. We can recover. You can see just how long the reload on this tank is. So I want to get around here and I want to help out my teammates here. I really would like that ELC even 90 to get out of there, which he does, thankfully. Now, a couple of their tanks are coming out to try and take shots at me, and I bait them out in front of my Progetto, my friend sitting here behind the rock, and he manages to slam 3 shots into the Emil, one of which misses, unfortunately. So we're going to settle into a bit more of a passive position here. You can see that low manages to make some sort of god shot. I'm not quite sure how he managed it. He manages to shoot me with AP, do no damage, but kill my loader. The reason I'm stopped here is I'm absolutely losing my mind as I'm playing this match, wondering how that's possible. But you can see the low here. He's now in a terrible position. I'll switch now just so you can see exactly what I'm aiming at. You will see that this tank has absolutely zero problems going straight through the upper plate of the low. Yeah, no problems there. Unfortunately, even with a high roll of 436, we still leave him on 2 hit points. We'll see if we can rectify that. Unfortunately, this is the downside of a long reload. So I have to waste another shot to finish him off here. Unfortunately, my clanmate was not able to get the shot on him without taking damage himself. I now deem it safe to move up. Like I said, this AMX-30 is still in a very bold position. I'm not quite sure how he survived here this long. You can see he is taking damage. I personally don't play that position. I find it to be far too exposed. And a nice shot right through the gun mantlet, the only place on that tank I think that actually has any armor, and we cut right through it like butter. Kind of surprising considering his mantlet is spaced, but I will graciously accept the damage. Now here I'm a little worried. They do have a Jagdpanther, and I do believe that he has moved to a position closer. Unfortunately, I'm not able to penetrate the turret face of the AMX-30 twice in a row. So bearing in mind that there is the possibility of a tank destroyer back there, I don't really want to fight that. And oh, what a travesty. There is a guard sitting in the hidden bush down at B9, and unfortunately I take a hit from him, followed by another hit from the Emil. The T-28 goes down, and I take another hit from the guard. I'm down to a 1-shot. What a terrible misplay. What are the chances that he's still sitting in that bush? I fire 1, and that misses. Now, unfortunately, on the number of hit points that I'm on and the Emil sitting there, it is not likely that I'd be able to retreat from here. So let me take another blind shot at the guard. Emil's been hit by artillery. He's now out. Let's see. I do have a little bit of support here. I do have our little friend here in the ELC even 90 trying to spot for me. I think about going for it here, but there's a good possibility that guard has support. And both of my supporting tanks as well as myself, we are all 1 shots from him. And there is that tank destroyer that I was worried about, popping right up. And that guard is still sitting in that bush. He must have a full camo crew or something. He must have a 9-0. Beyond that, what are the possibilities he's there? And a good blind fire, and a fire as well. That looks like he has full firefighting. I'm almost certain he has a high-skilled crew. It's very rare to find firefighting fully trained unless you have an exceptionally high-level crew. So I'm going to play a little bit passively here. We can see that my clanmate has moved over to the other side of the map to try and prevent that side from falling. We are currently winning, but not by much. We are up 2 tanks, but the hit points are about even. Likely due to myself and several others on this flank bleeding a little too much on this push. I check again for the guard, but no hit. So you'll notice we're starting to run low on heat ammunition. I only have 5 rounds left. Now, as I said in the garage, the APCR on this tank is still very good. but I would like to maintain a few rounds of heat ammo. Unfortunately, as I'm playing this game, I don't entirely notice. So I'll continue to fire heat a number of times. A rather bold peek here, and I do get spotted, which leads me to believe that there is more than likely either the Jagdpanther or the AMX-30 up there, possibly both, or the guard may have retreated there. I'm not sure which yet, and I'd rather not find out at the moment. So I take a few moments just to sit back, wait. As I said, we are still up 2 tanks, despite 2 more tanks on either team dying. But we are up about 500 hit points, so I can take some time, look around the map, make sure that the team is holding up. I'm not being flanked by anything at the moment. This tank is a vehicle that very much lives or dies based on map awareness. If you let yourself get surrounded in this tank, you just can't kill yourself out of situations fast enough. Just under 1900 DPM, even with the setup that I have, it's just not enough to be able to kill things quickly. We can see both the AMX and the Jagdpanther are up there. Can I sneak a shot in? Oh, not quite. Goes high over the ridge. Still taking my time here. I want to play this a little bit more passively. We're still up on tanks at this point, despite losing 1 more. Not able to get a shot on the AMX, but we are now down 2,000 hit points. It is possible that the hit point numbers are not 100% accurate. I can't see what's on the other side of the map, as I do not have the radio range, but I am noticing that a lot of the team over there are dying. We are now tied for tanks, but still down quite a bit of hit points. You can see my platoon mate has also taken a fair amount of damage here. We can see he's playing the mid-ridge, trying to spot some targets for me, but neither of us are in a position to peek here. So he decides he needs to go and secure the other side of the map and attempt to save artillery once more. Now I decide that there's no way for me to advance here. Any way for me to go forward would most likely result in my death. So after taking 1 more blind shot, I think it's time to leave this area. We can see I'm down to 2 heat shells, and finally I realize, and I switch over if I'm going to be blind firing that much, to the APCR. You can see the Jagdpanther, a very bold peek. I was trying to bait a shot from the AMX. As I said before from tank.gg, I'm fairly confident that I can bounce his shell, provided that I am hull down. We can see the turret armor really doing work here. Now I chose this game not particularly because I do an amazing amount of damage. You will see the primary reason that I selected it, but you will also see this is a very well-rounded game. You've seen the weaknesses and the strengths of the gun, but also the strengths of the armor here. That Jagdpanther is not very short of penetration, but I'm very confident peeking him with this turret. So I feel now it would be best, with only 5 tanks left on our team, to start moving back to the map so that I'm able to support my clanmate, as well as the tank destroyer and the guard that are still left alive here. Unfortunately, the artillery does go down. We can see I did get spotted as I crossed there. I'm trying to get as close to this berm here as possible, just to make it more difficult for artillery to hit me. So here I've taken up a defensive position just to prevent my teammates from getting flanked from this side. At a minimum, I'd like to be able to spot them so that my UDES up on the hill is able to deal with them. And we can see my clanmate spots the guard going on the offensive. I see him coming down. Now I know that the guard has poor gun depression. Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful takedown. You can be confident there, the guard had no chance of being able to use his gun depression there. Especially over the front, there was no chance of him being able to get his gun on me there. Unfortunately, we do lose our Progetto, and the UDES is now me and my clanmate in a 2v7. He is a 1 or 2 shot, I am a 1 shot. We have 771 HP between the two of us to the enemy's approximately 4,000. He takes out the CDA. And we can see here at the moment, I'm just trying to spot, trying to support him as best I can. His tank has substantially higher DPM, and even though I have accuracy, I also have the armor. So if I can bait the enemy forward and try to get them to bounce off me, or even just spot them, a good takedown on the AMX. That was a very questionable advance. I'm not quite sure why he didn't advance with the guard, but I won't complain about that. We can see the team in the lower left already condemning this match as a loss. We'll just see about that. We will just see about that. You can see my clanmate dueling with the enemy Progetto, seeing who can get the first shot. The enemy Progetto is a one-shot. My clanmate can take 2 or 3 from him, but they do have a lot of teammates left, including artillery. So make a peek here, and you can see on the map, pops up the Yag Panther. Now this might be difficult, but I'm so confident he's looking at my clanmate. That is 3 tanks that charged one at a time down the 8-9 line on steps. I'm not sure why you would do that in a game like this. That is very much going to be a throw. They're down to 1 actual tank left. Poor Basante. Let's see, can we get a shot into him before the clanmate kills him? He's hiding behind a rock. Let's take a blind shot. Let's see, did that hit and do damage? I believe it hit. I did not see the shell explode, and it did do damage. Excellent. My clanmate takes him down, and that just leaves the artillery. So I'll skip ahead here, just so we don't have to watch me and my clanmate chase down artillery. That has been my review of the 122 TM. Pretty decent medium tank. Once again, I wouldn't call it competitive, but I do consider it a very, very strong pub tank, particularly when you have good clanmates to play with. With that said, this has been Robman Gaming. I will see you all next time. Have a good day.